نحمد نصلي على رسول الكريم وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وأصحابه وبارك وسلم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Brothers, sisters, mothers, daughters, beloved children, today's topic is perhaps a bit different to the usual topics, but I thought it was important that we reflect on historical incidences that shapes the world that we live in today. And not very long ago, 27 years ago, the Bosnian crisis erupted in Europe, and the consequences were extremely dire, particularly for the Muslim community, who we now know are huge in numbers in Bosnia. The issue of Bosnia in particular is interesting to us because the Bosnian community itself was a very unique community, a community that was very solid in the way that they practiced their deen, despite the fact that it belonged to what was known at the time, and many of the younger people may not remember this. There was a country called Yugoslavia. The older people in the masjid would remember Yugoslavia. Today there is no Yugoslavia. And Bosnia was almost a province along with Serbia and Croatia and Montenegro as part of the larger country called Yugoslavia. So, like most of us, I often wonder why Muslims, we are under constant scrutiny for our practices, our beliefs, our traditions, our cultures, and that such pressure leads to us often to have to defend ourselves as Muslims. So when there's an incident in New Zealand or an incident in the UK, so what do you now say? You see, it was a Muslim-named person. And you end up having to defend your position as a Muslim. You end up denying the fact that this person cannot be Muslim, etc. We all know that. We've been through these kinds of discussions over a period of time. So crisis has happened. Trump always blows his anti-Muslim horn. There's a shift to the right in many European countries. We know that his policy was basically to exclude Muslims from the United States. It was the ticket on which he won the election, in fact. They're just going to keep Muslims out. And he's followed through with that. So it affects us as Muslims. You stand back and you ask, but why are these things happening to us? Why is it that we are targeted in the way that we are targeted? Why were Bosnian Muslims targeted in the way that they were targeted? So there's an endless stream of why questions that we continuously ask of ourselves. And how do we then understand this particular narrative? What do we do to start unpacking what's happening to us, and how do we deal with these issues? Does it mean that we are incapable of countering the kind of Islamophobia that we find? Do we not have the skills? What is it that's holding us back to defend the position that we have to defend? If you look at Christchurch, you look at Myanmar, Palestine, Iran is under attack at the moment, so we know what happened in Iraq. We know what happens in Syria. We know what's happening in India at the moment. Those of us who have family out there would know that Muslims are excluded largely from government posts in India. So they are a targeted community, and that is why 60–70% of our young Muslim boys are all over the world, which is perhaps a good thing. Looking for work or working in those areas. So the cycle of death and destruction then continues all over the world, particularly targeting Muslims. So when these things happen, there's outrage, naturally. We complain about it, we fight about it, we throw a few of our own bombs, there are big, big marches, we know what happens in Cape Town, and it's a good thing, because what we do is to create an awareness of an incident that may or may not have happened in some outland. So the kind of issues that creates impotence for us, we are made to feel that, you know, I'm completely powerless to do anything about this. It ends up with us trying to either respond in a very violent way, or we withdraw completely and say, so what can we do about this? There's nothing we can do about it. We'll raise our voices for a short while, and hopefully somebody will listen to us, and things will hopefully change. So there's an interesting nexus and connection. When the old USSR, and again, the younger people may not remember the USSR, which was the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, where all the current republics, Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, all those little Crimea, Uzbekistan, they were part of the larger portion of what we now know as Russia. And that collapsed, interestingly, in 1991. The collapse followed mainly as a result of a sustained Cold War. And again, it's a term that was used from a political point of view to describe the relationship between the United States at the time and Russia. So there was a sustained period of what was known as the Cold War. If Russia sent a spacecraft into space, America rushes to send the first man into space. And they succeeded in doing that because there was this one-upmanship in the process to see who is going to win the race. Sadly, or maybe in a good way, depending on how one reads and interprets history, the USSR collapsed in 1991. And then, interestingly, the focus or the microscope turned towards Europe, where NATO had a very strong hand in keeping the Western European nations together. Now, with the collapse of Yugoslavia in 1992, within months, literally, each province, Serbia, Croatia, and Bosnia declared or attempted to declare their own independence. And the fear was that because the bulk of people within Bosnia were Muslims, that they would create an Islamic state in the center of Europe. And this wasn't missed by the people like Radovan Milosevic and his cronies, who was sentenced to life imprisonment by the International Criminal Court. They saw the opportunity to cleanse Bosnia of Muslims. And in the cleansing process, they murdered, mutilated, destroyed masjids by the hundreds, by bombing them, putting hand grenades in the masjids, and destroyed the masjids in the process. There was an incident where up to 10,000 men and young boys were rounded up in Srebrenica in Bosnia. They were taken to a field and mowed down like when we shoot bows and arrows. They were lined up. The Serbian forces, or they claimed they were Serbian rebels. It wasn't us, it was the rebels. Lined up Muslim men and younger boys and shot and killed 10,000 of them over a 5-day period. 10,000 Muslim men and boys were murdered in that way. They grabbed our women folk, Muslim women folk in particular, and I remember reading at the time that some of the Serbian forces, when they caught a woman who was pregnant, tossed a coin between two of them and would ask or bet on whether the fetus in this woman's stomach, before they carve it open, is a male or a female fetus. That was the level of dastardly behavior that was conducted by the Serbian forces at the time. They also attacked the Christians who lived in and around Croatia and in Bosnia. So there was this attempt to wipe out Muslims from what was previously known as Yugoslavia. Now we ask ourselves, so how is it that Bosnian Muslims at the time were defenseless? How is it that they were attacked and at random murdered in the way that they were murdered? Oh, by the way, almost 150,000 people died over that period of time. Short period of time, 150,000. It's a very conservative number, but that's the number that the United Nations often touts as a number. We often believe that up to about 250,000 people would have died over a year and a half, 2-year period. So one starts to ask oneself, so why would they have targeted Muslims? I remember reading at the time a document that was issued, and I was looking for it and I couldn't find it, and I had the document. Bosnian Muslims in particular were highly qualified professional people. They were the doctors, they were the lawyers, they were the professors at universities, they were the accountants, they were the elite of the old Yugoslavia. And as a result, their interest lay mainly in being what they do best as professional people, provide the service that they did. The error at the time of the discussions at the time that they did not get involved in civil society activities. We are the elite of this nation, or so it was touted. But it does make sense. If you withdraw from civil interaction, then others start making decisions on our behalf. In our business life, if there's a deal to be made, we make sure we are there. We sit at the table. We negotiate at the table. We make sure that we get the best deal. Whether we're buying a car, whether we're buying goods for our stores, whatever it is, whether we buy a house, we don't buy a house by saying to Sheikh, maybe I can actually do that to Sheikh. Go and look at this house. If you think it's okay, I will buy the house. We don't do that. We make sure that as part of the negotiations, that we are there to negotiate, that we are participating at that level. So it was felt at the time that the kind of elite trajectory that the Bosnians were on meant that when the ticket turned, they didn't know how to defend themselves. And one looks back in the prophetic days of our Prophet ﷺ, where he trained people with archery, horses, and made sure that the troops who were going to support them were not only brilliant musallis who were standing behind him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but were also, when it was necessary, capable of defending the Muslim nation at the time. So, withdrawing from the scene left a void for people when it came to making sure that when it comes to defending themselves, that they were in fact able to defend themselves. So, in a sense, it became their Achilles heel. They left the defending to someone else who at the time then felt, but I think I have a better deal here. If I take over their properties, but be able to do that, I know to dispose of those people, which is then what happened. So the odds are stacked against them. And the risk is that we particularly become then consumers more than activists that we should be. And my fear often is, and I speak to the younger people in particular here, that if we're going to leave decision-making to others, others will make sure that they exploit the fact that we have left a void for them to benefit for themselves. The danger is that if we are not at the table, others will make calls on our behalf. And I find with elections around the corner in South Africa that we have almost pushed ourselves into a corner where we've become the elite of this nation. We are often targeted about that. There are already whimperings about the fact that we should make sure that the halal stamp on all the products should be removed, because the money that is collected by the various organizations is used to drive an Islamic agenda in this country. So we're not at the table to say to them, but that's a foolish notion. That it is not the case. That the halal means this. That the collections that we make on behalf of those who buy the stamp from us is used in the following manner. Here are the financial statements, you can inspect them. That there are no surpluses. All it does is to carry the cost of those inspectors who do their job. They don't know that because we are not at the table to tell them that. And that is the danger. So the fact that we have elections around the corner creates for me the concern that if as Muslims we don't go out there and participate, I'm not promoting any particular political party, but we need to actively participate to the point where when we are participating, they must understand that if this person, Muhammad, Yusuf, Dawood, is in this room, that we cannot tell a lie, we cannot be dishonest, we cannot be crooking, we cannot cut deals behind people's backs, because there is a Muslim in the room. That quality we can bring to the table only if we are present. That quality we can bring to the table when we sit in boardrooms. Bosasa would not have happened. The Zondo Commission would not have happened if as Muslims we stood up and countered the dishonesty that was going on and is going on in this country at this moment, and globally speaking for that matter. They must fear us. They must fear the Muslim. They must fear the fact that if this man walks into the room, he doesn't have a belt with dynamites around him, but he is going to speak the truth. And if I don't speak the truth, he is going to point it out to me. That is what should happen. And that is the quality, that is the prophetic quality, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, that they don't know about. I won't forget, in 1996, when I was principal of Islamic College, we organized the 6th International Islamic Education Conference, and it was my pleasure to host Dr. Muhammad Mayanja, who was from Uganda. And Dr. Mayanja is a very well-spoken person. He was a lecturer at Takeri University in Kampala. And I organized for him to attend SABC radio studios on a Sunday evening. I don't know if they still have it. Attend a religious program. Because he was a foreigner and he was a Muslim, they were very interested to know what happens in Central Africa. And whilst he's in the soundproof booth, Ahmed Sendengo was his colleague, and myself were standing outside, and Cyril walks in, who was from Guguletu. And I introduced Cyril to Ahmed, my brother from Uganda. And Cyril says, oh, that's very interesting. He's a person of darker skin color, and so is Ahmed. And he says, that's very interesting. Can I ask you a question? He asks him. I used to work on a building site. And on a Friday morning, around midday, my boss who used to employ me used to say, I'm going to pray now and ask God whether I should pay you now, today, or on Monday. And Ahmad looked at me and looked at him and looked at me and looked at him and said to him, you know, have you heard of Muhammad? He says, no. He says, you heard of Jesus? He says, yes. And Muhammad for us came after Jesus, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said to us, what did he say? Pay the man before his sweat dries. This man was astounded. So the bulk of South African population have zero knowledge of Muslims and Islam. I interact a lot with them. I was doing some training in entrepreneurship not so long ago, and 100% of the attendees were from the townships, and they were amazed at what I was trying to tell them in between sessions when there was time, when we talked religion. So they don't know religion. Now, they haven't met us yet because we are the elite, and that is dangerous. So my appeal today is for us to make sure that when we participate and be active participants. Don't participate by proxy. Make sure that you are the Muslim in the room. Because if we don't, we're going to be targets of forces that we know are out there. And only because they don't know our practices, our cultures, our traditions, and most importantly, they don't know our deen. And they don't know our deen because we don't take our deen to them. They don't know our deen. Guguletu is 1.5 kilometers from here. Sheikh Ismail Kamane has a huge battle in that masjid to attract the locals because we've separated ourselves from them. We regard them as others. They are alien nation who have come into this world to disturb our peace. That shouldn't be the case. We should make more effort to integrate with those who are in the majority in this country. And the only way to do that is to be the Muslim brother in the room. The only way to do that is to, in a very clear way, make sure that they understand that if this Muslim walks in here, brother, we won't be able to tell a lie, no deals, backhanders, no corruption, because you are there. And for us to be able to do that, we must be a Muslim brother in the heart. Not only in the room, but a Muslim brother by heart. So the Bosnian, what is the Bosnian connection to us? The Bosnian connection tells us that don't withdraw from civic activity. Participate. Make sure your voice is heard. Spread the peace of Islam to those who don't know Islam. Make sure that they know. If they don't know, make them understand what Islam says. If we don't, this country, if there's a fire that's going to be lit in Guguletu, it's going to burn right over the mountain, people. I'm not trying to use scare tactics. It's happened in Rwanda, where people look the same. The Tutsis and Hutus, they married each other, they knew each other. The flame was lit by a priest who said to the Hutus, we need to get rid of the Tutsis, and they slaughtered the Tutsis by their thousands. They slaughtered, and they all look alike. We don't look alike even. So participate. Make sure that we are active in what we do, and inshallah, the rest we leave up to the Almighty. So my last words in conclusion, be the Muslim brother in the room. That should be our war cry. Jazakallah khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.